Tonight on Broadcast Now, we have a special guest, Joe DeMax, owner and CEO of centralcontrol.io. If you're looking for a good way to control your workflow in video production, you don't want to miss this show. Also, we've got some special news coming out of NAB, hot off the presses this week when Broadcast Now starts now. Well, guys, welcome to another edition of Broadcast Now. We think you guys are going to have an awesome time tonight, as well as find some useful tools, as you heard in the teaser. We've got with us Mr. Marty McPadden from podjam.tv. Welcome, sir.
Hey, Stephen, how are you?
I'm doing a lot better than you were just a few minutes ago, so I'm just saying.
Don't even go there. That's like an inside joke, folks. We're not going to reveal that.
No, that's we're having a little fun in pre-show, getting things ready.
A little fun pre-show.
We've also got with us the man, the myth, and the mystery, Mr. Greg Terry. Welcome.
Welcome. Yeah, we were having a lot of fun prior to going online and prepping, and it's going to be awesome. I'm not sure Joe hung around.
Oh, there's
after the chaos we are, but I will say this to you. I've got a theme song tonight, and it's called We Are Family. Let's go.
Yes, as he said, we have a gentleman that's been a longtime fan of the show. He's watched this show religiously growing up, became an adult, and he had to adult, and now he has his own company, Central Control, Mr. Joe DeMax. Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been like 9 years, and I turned up to the pre-show, which we won't say what happened, but I honestly thought the show had seriously changed format. I've been assured that normal service shall be resumed momentarily. Thank you.
It's all it's all good here. So I guess what we should do first, and we see some of the folks here in the chat room. Greg, let's shift gears here. Greg, welcome everybody in the chat room. I'll pull some comments up, and then we'll get to some
John
news.
Preto checking in there on Facebook, so a big hello to John there. And Chris Carpenter, he's going, hello, it's been a while, so nice to see you as well. And I'm flipping over to Stephen to the Tech Buzz YouTube now, and I will pull those up. Oh, there you go. Cryotech is up in the house. Love having Cryotech in the house. But most importantly, Joe DeMax, everything's going to be okay. We had a little bit of pre-show fun. It gets you prepped, it gets your juices flowing, and gets the blood flowing so we can have a great time interacting. And tonight's just going to be awesome. I am pumped about the things we're going to be talking about with Joe and ourselves.
Absolutely. And so before, if you guys tuned into my radio show on Saturday and even Broadcast Now last week, we talked about the different companies that were pulling out of NAB. Panasonic and Sony were the big ones that we talked about last Thursday. Well, we found out on Saturday, and I reported on it, that Ross and a few other pretty big companies pulled out. Come to know yesterday, NAB pulled the plug for at least this year, as if you go to nabshow.com, they had no other choice, and we kind of predicted this last week that it was coming in the next week or two, and sure enough, they killed it off, which I think was a smart and sensible move on NAB's part. But the question that I have for you guys before we get any further They are talking about resuming it April 23rd through 27th of 2022, which I never even agreed with why to do it in October and then again 6 months later. I mean, most companies have their release cycles. They're not really going to do anything. So my question, because the next big conference, and Joe, I kind of want to start with you on this one, IBC over in your neck of the woods, are we going to see that close? Because they moved it from September to December, but I still think that's kind of early. I think they're going to have to call it.
I don't think it will happen, and I think December probably makes it more unlikely than September, because we know that there's going to be the respiratory illness season, as there always is, and the situation is not going to look better by December. We know this, so I think ABC will fall next, unfortunately.
Marty?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. I agree with Joe. I think it's a little early, especially on a global basis. We were talking a little bit before the show about this, and it's a complicated thing. So as far as them closing it down, it just makes financial sense. I think once you had these major companies pulling out, it made it less attractive for people to actually attend the show, and they add those two together, and it just becomes financially untenable to really go forward and have a show. You're not going to have anybody there. The other question is, will they have it? They moved it to April. I'm optimistic. I think that the way that I'm not sure how you guys feel, but the way that the virus, I mean, we're getting to the point now where either you're going to be infected or be vaccinated in one way or the other. And at least in the United States, I think by the spring, I'm hopeful and optimistic that we'll get to at least a herd immunity status where we'll have enough of either one of those things happening. The question mark really is globally. A lot of the countries are still way behind. We're fortunate in the U.S. We, vaccinations and we have our numbers up. I don't know, because it is an international show. So I'm optimistically hopeful that they'll have it. But I agree with you, Stephen. I think it's like now you got to think about release schedules and does it fit with companies and everything. Yeah. And I don't know, so.
Mr. Terry, your thoughts?
Oh, it'll definitely be happening in April. So we prophesied last week that this show would be canceled, and of course it unfolds in the next 7 days, but I'm with Marty on this one. I'm completely confident. You have to understand, folks, this was kind of a little precursor to some of our behind the scenes chatting. We're always in studio getting framed up, getting our guests in, starting at 30 minutes prior to show. And let me tell you something, it was a hard hat area prior to the program beginning. There were bombs and missiles flowing everywhere, and we did get to the truth. I do see Cryotech in there. He says, so we're talking culture services tonight. We are talking control services and rainwater games. The beverage of the night for you, buddy, is the blackberry water. So, folks, the deal is, I agree with Marty. I think our world's going to struggle and stagger for the next 4, 5, 6 months, but hopefully we come through the fall and winter. Of course, that's our hemisphere, and we get through the spring and summer in the southern hemisphere, and early next year, so we're getting back to normal.
IBC in December. Do you think it'll happen?
The man from London, right?
Well, he's close to there.
Close to London.
It's the guy I'm in Nottingham in England, and IBC takes place in Amsterdam.
It takes place in Amsterdam. I'm in Amsterdam all the time, so pretty close. Pretty quick little flight there. No, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we're going to see normality until next March or April.
All right, there you have it, folks. So we'll have to keep a watch for that. We'll let you guys know as soon as possible. We also want to give a shout out really quick before we get into some central control and understanding. If you guys need to step out and during any time during this program and you want to continue listening to it, head over to basicsbroadcasting.com. We're streaming live right on that radio station right now. That's out of Chicago. We are live, as you can see right there on the website. We are live and on the air, and we want to give a shout-out. Thank you to the guys over at Basic Broadcast for letting us on. There is an iPhone and an Android app that you can download, and apparently an Amazon. I'll have to download that one. But you can come on over here and get the application and listen live right now to us if you have to step out. So we'd encourage you to do that, because Joe is going to drop some knowledge on us, because a lot of us that are using vMix or Wirecast or OBS or TriCasters or maybe a little bit of everything, right, Joe? You have a solution that can solve that problem.
Certainly, yeah. I guess I should probably start by saying how I came to build this, like how it all came together.
Yes.
As Stephen kind of alluded to, I had some background in broadcasts from like going back to about 10 years. Took a step back, and then slowly a few years later got back into it. And I had I think I bought this NewTek Video Toaster 5 on eBay in like the summer of 2017. And when I got the unit, it didn't work. Like, it'd been damaged in shipping, but it did come with the control panel. So the unit wasn't working, but I was just looking at this thing like, okay, maybe I can write some software that maybe will allow me to, use this to control vMix. The video toaster's dead. Let's move on and let's see, maybe we can repurpose this old hardware to do something else. So that summer, I wrote some software that could do just that. And as I started to go along, I shared it with some people, and they said, well, could you support this control surface or that control surface? And then, like, instead of vMix, could we use this to control a TriCaster or OBS? And it became, I kind of knew then that at some point I would need to do something better than keep like bodging this stuff into my program that I'd written in a few nights. But I never had the time till March of 2020, when while I was working in live events and I was very, very busy. Then pretty much overnight, I wasn't busy anymore. I had no job overnight. So I found myself spending a lot of time at home and started like sketching on like a notepad, like this idea for this program where I could bring all this stuff together in like a modular way and map stuff, different stuff, and basically anything can control anything. And I thought, if I could build that, I could have maybe a really powerful tool on my hands. So I think I spent maybe 7 nights a week just in my flat on my own, because I wasn't allowed to go out and see anyone, just coding away at this. And then 2 months later, I released it. And ever since then, I've just been adding features and features and features.
Yeah, and this is something that I know myself, I'm using it. We've been implementing it at the school. Greg, your church has now implemented central control. There's a lot of folks that are using this. Tom Sinclair over Eastern Shore Broadcasting, I believe he's using it. So there's a lot of guys, that run TriCaster and vMix, or you want to control your PTZ cameras, whatever, and you have one controller to do it all, right?
Yeah. Joe helped us. Joe helped us a lot yesterday. I think, was it yesterday? I was traveling. So Joe, you actually called in with Steven and was helping us getting some stuff straight. So a big appreciation and shout out to you. And one of the things I think that's important, when you're sitting here with somebody who's telling you their story, and then, life's kicking along normal, and then all of a sudden in March, and of course he's talking about when the global pandemic was declared, his life changed overnight. So Joe, I want to give a big shout out to you, man, because you didn't just tuck tail and quit on life, but what you actually did was you allowed a closed door to open another door, and all of a sudden creativity was birthed out of you, and you brought a gift out of yourself that's been a big help for everybody else. So thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much. That puts it quite nicely. As well as wanting this for I wanted this as well for myself, because slowly but surely, the phone started to ring saying, "Can you come and do our live streams?" And then I started building this, adding stuff to this tool because I needed it for myself, and that's kind of how it really started to grow.
I think it's interesting because people don't realize that, I went from having, if you look at some of the past pictures, even in my studio, I had 3 or 4 controllers that I was using to do a single production. Now I'm down to my TriCaster interface, a Stream Deck, and my PTZ optics controller. So I eliminated 3 or 4 controllers out of my whole setup because of central control. And then we even did something fun. I'm sure Joe will get to it a little later, where if I want to go back by the TV there, I have a TriCaster control surface back here that I can actually control the whole production from. That we kind of had a little bit of fun back there with that. But if you guys are watching this and you want to go check it out, you can come over here, joecentralcontrol.io, and you can download a free trial. That's 30 days. What is the cost of this? What is it, $50 for lifetime? Is that right?
That is right. At present, wink, wink, it is $49 for a perpetual license. You check out PayPal and you get your license sent to you immediately.
Once and done. No subscriptions, no nothing. One and done. That's all you got.
Stephen, pop that comment up there for me from Kevin Michael Reed off of YouTube. Really wonderful comment there. He says, Central Control is brilliant. So is Joe. CC is an invaluable tool in our control room. I've been learning it. I do not run it, but I think I'm going to be converting. So I've been learning it and researching it, and Stephen's been dipping my feet into Central Control. And I agree with you, Kevin Michael Reed. It's ridiculous.
Well, I know Chris, your sound tech over at the media director, he was really interested.
He's drooling.
Well, Joe was telling him about the implementations eventually for doing the X32, which I thought was really, really cool. Now you're taking it a step further, Joe. You're taking it outside of the video realm, right? And now you're taking it into the audio realm. Marty, maybe you need one of these things. Maybe you need this to control your Behringer.
Yeah, I mean, I have a Behringer. I have a Rodecaster Pro. What I like about this, I have yet to. I got to get into this and check this out a little more deeply. But what I like about it is it's almost like building blocks, and you can kind of tailor it to whatever your needs are. And that's, I mean, I think Joe with this particular software, because it's so scattered as far as so many things going on in online video, software tools, hardware, all these different pieces, and they all have different control units. And Stephen, you were mentioning this before. You may have like 3 or 4 different control units. It gets all mangled and all confused. And Joe, one of the things I appreciate is you bringing this all together. You can control software and hardware through MIDI devices. You can kind of customize it to what your workflow is. That's kind of the magic sauce. I haven't seen anything like this until you came out with this. Is like bringing all these different things together. And I think that's what people are responding to.
Well, let me give a quick example. I don't think you realize this. When Greg asked me, and I'm just, because this is a show where we can learn about this, right? Greg asked me to pull up the comment for the gentleman on Kevin Michael Reed on YouTube. The TriCaster has a known bug in it right now that sometimes it loses connection to the control surface. I was still able to switch the shots without clicking on the mouse and keyboard because of Central Control set up on my Stream Deck and bring up that comment. If you notice that the lower third that came up said input on it, because I didn't want that up there, but I couldn't switch it off because the TriCaster control surface just blinked out and it recovered itself. But it's that split second where now I have another option to get it without having to grab the mouse and keyboard. So right there in real time it happened, so you could see where Central Control basically saved what could have been a catastrophe with that setup. Sorry, Joe, I'm running an ad for you there.
No, you don't have to apologize for that. I mean, maybe I'd be happy to tell you a little bit about the setup I've got going here during this show with Central Control. You want to see that?
Let's give a demo here. Let's see what we
absolutely.
Show us what you got here.
Sure. Let me switch over. Now, I think this is the first time this has ever been seen publicly.
So is
I'm
this?
not gonna get into
this is a new version, right?
Exclusive.
This is
It is a new
exclusive.
version.
Before you go in, we have a comment from Cryotech. Does it support the new Blackmagic A10 Minis?
Yes, and I'm actually controlling one right now, which I'll get into.
There you go.
If we take a look over here, this is the main window, and it is exactly as Marty kind of said. You have these building blocks, right? When you start a new project, this list here on the left is completely blank and you have nothing. It gets exciting when you click this add button and we can start adding a whole different bunch of what we call devices. And a device can be any number of things, right? It can be a control panel, it can be a switcher, an audio mixer, even like a media server, Microsoft PowerPoint, so on and so forth, all kinds of stuff. And then we add these to our project, and there's often some parameter you need to fill in. Okay, so what port's this plugged into? What's the IP address of vMix? Blah, blah, blah. And once you've got all of these set up, you can start to map controls to do stuff. So right now I have in front of me, I've got this old NewTek Live Control LC11, which is the panel from that VT5 I mentioned that I've now repurposed, originally just to control my vMix, but now it's doing everything ever.
And Joe,
So
just before you go any further, you can get those control surfaces off of eBay for like $150 right now.
Well, you used to be able to, and then
yeah, you made people sell them out, right?
There kind of became a demand for them again. Anyway, if I click this control mapping button over here, it lists all the different, and it might be hard to read this, but it lists all the different controls on the surface. So, for example, if I look at preview 1, I have this map to set my preview in vMix. That's the vMix that I'm actually coming to you through, that's letting me do this double box effect. Program is to say it sets vMix program. But where this setup gets kind of cool is I have this set up here on the effects row, the top row of this LC11, to switch my 8M Mini, which is actually what feeds the TV. And I've set it up so with one button punch, I can do some kind of cool logic here. So first, it puts the source on the preview row, then it does an auto on the switcher, and then it shows me that state on the button. So if I just punch back over to camera 1, if I start switching on this row here, that's a Raspberry Pi screensaver. I can switch between sources on my TV, and you'll notice that as soon as I switch to that, my vMix system here actually started rolling a video automatically, which is something we'll get into later. But yeah, that's the basic premise, is that I can basically map these controls here to do anything I like, and a control doesn't have to do one thing for one device. I could say, take this fade overlay button, and I could make it do a fade on both my vMixes, a vMix and an 8M, all kinds of stuff. And I can keep stacking up these commands and just basically, really, as you guys have said, take control of my entire production off one control surface.
And that's essentially what you had worked with me on with my setup. I actually have something. Let me pull this down so you can see. I have central control running, believe it or not, on this little i3 laptop. Now, it's not, with all the features, it's not the most robust computer to run it on, but it's essentially running on this with the Stream Deck connected to it. But I'm actually controlling the TriCaster control surface with it, the Stream Deck XL, and vMix, all from on this inside of it, and bringing in vMix comments that you guys are seeing. That's actually from vMix social over there, and I'm bringing it in over the network into the TriCaster. So it's helped my production.
To take that example, Stephen, for instance, I believe that the way we programmed it on your system is that you press one button, vMix queues up a DSK or something, and then the comment is shown, and then it does a little pause, and then it tells the TriCaster to bring up the relevant keyer for that graphic. Yep. So with one button punch, you have all these systems being doing as they need to do, rather than even frantically looking around saying, you've got to click this, and then you've got to time that right. No, you press one button and it happens.
And that's something, Marty, you brought up about, you always say, I make it look easy, but there's other things that are in the mix of the ingredients, right, to make it look easy. You have to embrace tools like this, because you can take a 5-man production with a tool like this and turn it into a single-man production, but have the effects of a 5-man production.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, certainly I was probably one of the inspirations. I think Joe knows this. I mean, in a regular television studio, putting on shows like this, it's a team sport. And normally in a traditional setup, what you would have is a team of people working on the production. Everybody would have a singular job because we're not very good at multitasking. So, and you work as a team. It's almost like a football team would act as a team to achieve one goal. The brilliant thing about what Joe's doing with his software is now, with all the tools available and the way that streaming is going, a lot of people, like you, Stephen, you bring up a good example. A lot of people, they have no choice. They have to be a one-man band. They're a broadcaster on camera, but they don't have a team of people. They have to do it all themselves. And you could imagine, especially if you want to do something any kind of sophistication, it's too much. I mean, you're a rare case. You've been doing this for a very long time. You've got the muscle memory. You've practiced a long time. Even for the best of us, it's very, very difficult to keep everything on track and be able to actually present on camera. Central control, what that does is what you were mentioning, Stephen. You can build these shows out and build a lot of automation without much difficulty. It just reminds me of, for those of you that use iOS devices and are familiar with Shortcuts, this app in iOS, where you can actually build automations on the iPhone, and I think it's coming to the desktop. It reminds me very much of that, where it brings programming. It's programming and brings it down to a level where you don't necessarily have to be a developer. Joe's done a lot of the work, provides the building blocks, and then you can build these automations. And then if you have a show, you can build out these show and kind of step by step. And so if you have it open and you change shots, you can build it in advance and press the one button, like Stephen, what you're doing with the Stream Deck, getting the comments in there on screen and be able to do everything else. A lot of stuff happening all at once. It reminds me also of what Blackmagic does with macros, where you can build, but it's a lot simpler, a lot more. It's much more graphic. It's a lot easier to get around. But yeah, I mean, that's the exciting thing. I don't know of anything else that does this, what Joe has here. And I would think it would be a tremendous benefit to those of you that are trying to do shows that are, you're the only one doing everything. And I think it's worth learning how, like Joe's provided this toolbox, and I think it's definitely worth getting in there and learning how to use it because of the tremendous benefit it has, especially for solo producers.
Absolutely.
Marty, you are spot on 100%. I'm a self-producer, Stream Deck, VMix, all this jazz. And it gets so difficult without a nice tool like Central Control, because I have been looking at it. Steven's been teaching me about it. But I will. Can we hurry up and get this stream over so I can download it? But the self-producing, I went from 10 fingers to 7. And I lost 3 fingers just be getting jammed between keys trying to get this stuff done. So anything that can make it easier. And the other thing is, Joe, did I see a keyboard off your camera?
A
keyboard player?
Oh, there is. I think you did see a MIDI keyboard just over there.
Hey, are you a musician?
Oh, somewhat. That was used for lighting control in a nightclub, believe it or not. So no, but I do play. That's why I took
go,
it back
man.
over the pandemic.
That's what I
play
go.
bass as well.
Nice. All right. Central Control's over. We're going to talk about music for the next 30 minutes.
Well, you guys can talk about music real quick. We're going to take a quick break and thank our sponsors that help make this happen. I know Rainwater asked about what a TriCaster is. We'll talk about that real quick when we get back.
This episode is sponsored in part by PTZ Optics. Why hire a camera operator when the control is in your hands? Visit ptzoptics.com for more information. And by NewTek, makers of the TriCaster TC1. Stun your viewers, not your accountant. Visit newtek.com for more information.
So it was asked right before break here what a TriCaster is. We talk about this a lot. Well, a TriCaster is essentially a video production computer, and here's a good example of it, Rainwater, and this is why Central Control fits in, because depending on what type of control panel you have for the TriCaster, this is what I use. I use a TC1, and I have one of the small controllers, and not because I didn't want one of the big ones. It would be hard for somebody like me who's self-producing to use one of the 2-stripe or 3-stripe or 4-stripe, whatever the upper one is. This is a 2-stripe control surface. It's very difficult to host a show and use something that's twice the size of what I'm using now. But this is essentially a TriCaster. It's a Windows-based computer with proprietary software on it for video production, essentially. So it's what the pros are using in like the NBA with Fox, all these big video productions, and that's what we use here in the studio. And I actually have this is the control surface that I use. Let me pull that lower third back. This is the small control surface, and you saw that 2-stripe. There's no way it would be too difficult to run a 2-stripe by myself. That's more or less if you're not on camera and you're doing some production. So, Joe, let's talk a little bit about your exclusive that you're giving us here, which I'm very happy about. You have a new version of Central Control coming, I'm assuming soon.
I'm hoping by mid October. There are big changes afoot, so it means that like stuff keeps getting delayed. But I think by mid October we'll be ready, and I'd love to show you some of the more, shall we say, ready features.
Sure.
So let's take a look. We'll go back over to that. I better minimize the return video.
We mentioned while he's doing that. We mentioned the Pizza Joe's. Brad wants to come back. The Pizza Joe's commercial.
So, here we are back in the main window, and one of the things I've always prided myself about with Central Control is how quickly you can map an entire control surface. So I've just added another LC11. I won't enable it, but just so we have like some fresh buttons that aren't already mapped stuff, just so we can start over, right? So from the beginning, there was this quick assign function, and what you would do is you'd select a command. So like, where is it? We'll do set mix preview. Seems to be where I always start. So you click this quick assign, and you keep hitting this plus button over and over again, and then the commands will be assigned, and you probably might struggle to read, but like a parameter, like the number of the input that you were switching to would be incremented every time. So you just hammer this button several times, and then within a few seconds you'd have like an entire row of buttons mapped. And the other important thing about this, and Greg, I think as a vMix user you'll appreciate this, is that we don't do activators. Like if you map a command, if it has like a feedback information that can come from vMix, so like the button lights up when that source is on preview, once you've mapped the command, that happens. You don't have to then say, right, now we've mapped 10 buttons, now we've got to do 10 activators. You don't do that here. It's like it's done.
That's the big deal, because I do use vMix and I do use activators, and I love vMix. I love my Stream Deck, but sometimes that's a pain in the Watusi to get it dialed in. So that would be awesome, man.
Yeah, I mean, I found why that always tricked me is that I would I'd program my Stream Deck with vMix and activators, and everything would be fine. But I'd move a button, I'd move a shortcut, and then forget about the relevant activator, and then I'd be like, why is this telling me this? This is not true. So that for me was a big part of this tool.
Beauty.
But so that was quite a fast way to map all of those controls. But for version 2, I thought we could do better than that. So let's do the program row, and I'm going to knock this input number parameter down. This says, okay, what input number is the button going to control? We'll knock it back down to 1. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the Shift key here, and I'm going to multi-select program buttons 1 through 11. I'm going to right-click these, and I'm going to click Assign Commands. And just like that, all of these 11 buttons on the program row are now assigned, ready to go. They have feedback. And we did that in, 5 seconds.
Holy moly.
I tried to tell you. It's makes your life that much easier. And then, like he said, by adding, what I like is that you can add multiple, we'll call them devices, right, to a single button. So if you wanted to simultaneously start recording on the TriCaster, or let's say you're using vMix as your main streaming, and then you had like another program that you were going to record, you could hit the record button once, but it starts to record simultaneously in those 2 other programs for backups. We all should be using backup recordings, right? I mean, not just one.
You know what logically this brings into play? Logically, just, listen to what Joe just said. watching what he was doing, I understand because I'm a vMix user, the beauty of it. But then, Stephen, you just said about being able to multi-assign so that you are protecting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
How many content creators, streamers, production guys, you think everything's going great, and all of a sudden you remember, crap, I didn't hit that button, right? This takes that out of it. It's a protection. It's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Certainly.
So with this, what are some of the new features? If anybody's been using, what can you talk about right now that you've implemented in version 2 that some of us
Totally.
that are using version 1 are going to be really excited about? Because I know there's probably people in here right now that are central control users, and they want to know, Joe, what have you been working on?
Totally. So a big question that I started to get like a few months after releasing it, and these questions kind of frustrated myself because I knew that this needed to be there because I wanted it for myself. So a lot of people using, say, a Blackmagic ATEM in conjunction with like a vMix system. So like, for example, you have the ATEM that's maybe doing like a low latency mix for like the screens at the project screens at your church. And then vMix needs to have the exact same video mix, but that's going out to the stream. So they need to be synchronized. And of course, you could do that by using one control surface in central control and just like mapping, every button sends a command to this and a command to that. That would work. The other workflow people would ask about is, I want it so that when I punch up an input on my ATEM, let's say that input is connected to some kind of video player. Well, I want that video player to just auto roll. Like TriCaster users will know all about this because you guys have that feature. And even if you've got vMix, if it's all on one system, it does that. But no, we've got an ATEM that's our video switcher, and then we've got some other playout device. When I punch that on air, I want it to roll the video. And then say, once vMix finishes playing the video, I then want that to tell the ATEM to then hit a transition back to whatever camera. More like, this is the kind of stuff that makes it more into an automation tool. And oh no, that's how it starts. So let me kind of show you how that works in practice. So there's always been this control mapping button, which I believe used to be called device mapping in the shipping versions. But now, so, controllers would have controls, but it would always be grayed out as it is here, disabled for switches, vMix, stuff like that, because it didn't have any controls. So what I've added to those is what we call triggers. And this might be a familiar concept for vMix and TriCaster users because there's kind of a notion of that. But those triggers kind of work inside the box. So if I open this trigger mapping window, it presents me with like a few different events that I can use to trigger something else in the system. So for example, I can say, okay, when a source is on air, and then we can add a condition. And this is exactly what Marty was talking about. It's kind of like programming. So if I add a condition, yeah, exactly. So if we open this edit condition window, I can say if the input name equals camera 4, let's type that now. Then you see I have this condition added, and then the condition can have commands mapped to it. So I could say, okay, when that happens, I want the lights in my studio to turn off, which would be infinitely stupid, but you could do it. But more realistically, what you'd probably do is you'd say, okay, when that source goes on air, we're going to say we'll play an input in vMix. And if I press this button, I can find that command. I'd say, okay, we'll play this CC input, which is just a video file. And then we take that a step further by going into the vMix device, which also has a trigger, and it has a trigger called video finished. And then I've already done it here. And then that would say, tell the ATEM to switch back to whatever's on preview and then restart the input so it's ready to go again. I think there's probably quite a lot to take in there, but if you've ever worked with these kind of setups, you no doubt can tell where I'm going with this and like the promise that this will fulfill?
I think the biggest question I have for you, even for the new one, and I think a lot of other users might have this, because I've asked you this off air, where I've said, okay, Joe, what's the command for, taking something live, or what's the command for doing the preview row or program row? I think it would be great to add as an addition, maybe an explanation PDF of something where it has the command and it says, this is used to take your source live, or this is used to do a transition live, for people that maybe like me who are used to certain wording on the TriCaster, or if you use OBS or Wirecast. I don't know if the comment folks here, if the people in the chat, we'll call it a chat, think the same thing. But I think that would enhance. I know that's extra work on your part, but I don't know. I think it would be great, guys. What do you think, Marty? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've yet to test this out, but I would say, what's fascinating to me is, and I used to have a Blackmagic A10 Mini Pro ISO. I sold it. I'm actually looking at maybe getting the Extreme, but I like the idea. I think there's a lot of use cases out there. What's in for me is mixing the hardware. I like having the hardware. I like Blackmagic stuff, but I also like vMix and some of the software, and mixing. We've talked about this on other shows, this toolbox. And I don't know of any other, and there's controllers out there, software controllers for Blackmagic products. I don't know of anything that really brings it all together. And that's what's fascinating me is this is very powerful stuff. And one of the things, if you're watching this, hopefully people don't get overwhelmed. And it's worth getting, I think the thing I really want to point out is worth getting into the weeds and really learning this and learning the interface and learning how it actually works. And you are kind of learning programming at a simplified manner, but it will take some work to put some of these things together. But the way I see it is, man, what an opportunity to be able to put together these workflows. And it's just going to make, if you're doing live streaming, it's just going to make your life a lot easier. And the results are going to be much more professional, because you're going to be able to do that much more. So you're going to be able to do things you can't possibly do by yourself, like combining these different triggers and workflows, and one trigger is another. And I like the conditional stuff where if it meets this condition, and think about it, if you have no experience in programming, and I'm no developer, but I like the idea is, okay, you can start thinking logically here, and this could be your introduction into simple programming. And I'm telling you, it's worth the investment. Anything great, you have to put the time in to learn. And I just love the idea of how versatile this is. And you're really getting to, it's really the sky's the limit. And not only can you combine the different, like a Blackmagic switcher, a vMix switcher, but the control surfaces. I mean, if you have whatever you have lying around. I have a Stream Deck somewhere around here, and I have a MIDI device. And whatever you have lying around, you can kind of combine. And that to me is just like, man, the wheels are turning. It's like, wow, all the stuff you can combine, into these various workflows. It's almost reminds me very much, if you're a graphics person learning Photoshop for the first time, there's a lot of tools in there. It can be very overwhelming, but think of what you can do with it, and when you can combine different things. I mean, that's the magic right here. And I've never seen anything like this. And the idea that you can combine the different switchers, and they're not normally don't work together, but this is kind of the magical link that links everything together. That's what's really exciting for me.
And Greg?
Well, Marty, let me jump off on you there. You want to answer that question first, Stephen?
Well, that's what I was going to do, but then I was going to show with you.
We can read each other's mind.
Yeah. So, Joe, do you want to answer that real quick? Can we create our own triggers, or are they all hard-coded?
Yeah, so they are hard-coded, because like we have to know what event we're supposed to be looking for from that device, right? So like it'd be really hard, and I don't think it'd be user-friendly if there was some way to like shoehorn in new triggers. But while they are hard-coded, as you saw, you get to define the conditions yourself with like simple if-else logic, and it's it gets quite interesting, some of the conditions. Like with the vMix one, for example, I don't have to say we'll use the input name. We could use the input number. One really cool integration I actually did with triggers, I put in this streaming changed one on, because one of the devices we have in central control is the TP-Link Casa smart plugs. They're just like a plug that you can switch on and off with your phone. So what I did with this streaming change trigger is, if streaming equals true, it was always going to happen with the beta, but the condition I'd set up was, if streaming equals true, it would tell the Casa smart plug to turn on, which was plugged into an on-air light I had set up outside the studio door here.
Nice.
And when I set up another trigger that when streaming equals false, it would turn the light off.
That's awesome.
Holy moly. Hey, you know what I was thinking about, Stephen and Joe and Marty? I want to jump off on what Marty said there. He was saying, okay, maybe you're watching broadcast now tonight, or you'll be watching later on a rebroadcast, and you're going, okay, this looks really cool, but it's really over my head. That's okay. You've got to begin digging in, and Marty gave some good advice there. You know, you find the avenue and the pathway you want to go, and that's one of the things I appreciate about Stephen and Marty in Broadcast Now, and now, you know, Joe to Max. You know, we've went from Joe to Max to John Mahoney. We're bringing quality avenues for all of us to become better broadcasters and better producers. This is phenomenal, and we're just getting going. But now let me tell you a little bit of my story. Joe's probably going to laugh at this, but that's okay. So when Stephen was helping me build my studio last year, the pandemic hit. I converted, went to a lot of online, and I did see a question in there from somebody, Kamla, I think. Did I go to school for public speaking? Yes, I did. This is what I do for a living. I'm a speaker and a musician. So, yeah, improv. Yeah. So, my point being for this, Stephen set me up. Let's get going. He helped me design the studio. Stephen goes, okay, I believe in what you're doing. He helped me build the studio. Next thing you know, he goes, I got an idea for this. I got an idea for this. Switched me to vMix. When I first started working with vMix, I had to do the deep dive like Marty's talking about. I had to learn the software because I can't. Stephen lives 30 minutes from me. I can't say, Stephen.
He had 80 inputs.
Stephen, get over to my house and fix this. I'm going live in an hour. I couldn't do that. I had to become a master of vMix. I'm not a master, but I'm pretty daggone good at vMix. Now, here's where I want to encourage everybody tonight. So about 6 months ago, Stephen buzzes me. He says, hey, Greg, you need to get central control because you're to the point now where you can integrate central control. It's going to make your life easier. I know Joe to Max. The guy's brilliant. The software's brilliant, and it's going to make you a better broadcaster. Honestly, Joe, here's the deal. I went to your website, started looking around, watched a couple videos, went over to Stephen's, and this was about 6 months ago, and I'm seeing central control. He goes, and I looked at it, and I said, oh, my goodness. I do not even understand English anymore. Now, fast forward 6 months, Joe. 6 months. Everything that you are doing, not on the code side and the software integration, I've got to, learn the infrastructure of how it moves. But as far as every bit of terminology, I'm like going, okay, bring it on, baby. This is easy because I learned vMix. I learned Stream Deck. Now you bring in that baby of central control on top of it, and you're golden. So, guys, if you're watching the program tonight and you're going, okay, this is phenomenal, but like that dude's really smart, it's kind of over my head, that's okay. You've got to dig in and you grow from level to level to level. Honestly, 6 months ago, I looked at central control and I go, maybe one day. Today, I'm watching what Joe's doing, no problem, because I understand the backside. So that kind of parallels there, Marty, with what you're saying. We've got to learn the tools of our trade.
And also, I'll add this, Greg. Didn't you find when you dug in? I mean, it can be intimidating if you have no experience with this stuff. But there'll be a point in time where it starts to click, and it starts to make sense. And it's like the aha moment. It's like,
yes.
Oh,
not only does it
I
click, the light bulb goes off, and not only does it click, but you get to the point. I'm not a coder, but maybe you begin to learn it, or a dev. And if you get to that level, go to a blockchain somewhere and start coding for Bitcoin. All right, whatever. But I'll never be there. But on the language of vMix, on the language of broadcasting and the technology and the terminology, I got it. It just took time. And now, because I'm a self-producer, when I'm rolling that program unsyndicated, the clock hits, I've got to be live. I'm not sweating over the production.
Right.
Zero. All I got to worry about is the content, because my body knows how to run vMix and the Stream Deck.
Well, and I went to Joe and I said to him, I was making all these macros, and Joe goes, "What are you doing that for?" And I'm like, "Well, because." He's like, just do it with central control.
It took some persuading. It did
because here's the thing. I have a workflow, and Joe's like, we can get rid of all that. He's like, one button. So what we did was, this is my Stream Deck that sits on top of the TriCaster. Joe set it up so I have all my inputs here. You can see it's red because that's what's hot right now. That's live in TriCaster. But any of this second row acts as the second row of the TriCaster, the preview row, so I can go through these two rows. The cool part is he also set it up to where I could switch the background on my TVs to whatever I want within those four. Those are 4 backgrounds that I choose from. So I could just press any of those buttons that's on the vMix machine, not the TriCaster, and I can change my TV. I can also pull up my show that I do Friday night, Retro Buzz, lower third that has the comments, and then there's the Broadcast Now one, which we're using today. I can stream and record from vMix, turn the audio off on the TriCaster, do live rerun swap. He has it set up to where if I want to go back to reruns, I just hit reruns. I mean, this is essentially set up so that I can hit anything here. I'm just going to pull the lower third up as I switch back here. But you can see, to make my life easier, Joe's like, well, why do you want that second controller over there when you could have everything right on your Stream Deck in front? We can do folders, right? I think that's what you call them, folders?
We call them layers.
Layers, okay. So you could set it up if you needed more buttons, right? You essentially create layers inside of the Stream Deck.
Steven, your Stream Deck is so logically laid out and beautiful. That had to be Joe. Yours says input 1, 2, 3, 4 in this background. You know what mine says? I have mine labeled for me. Hit this button first, dummy. This is the second video. Okay? But I get it right.
No, actually, he had me push the buttons and when he was showing me how to do it, because it makes sense, because a lot of times you'll see me. Here, I'll go back to that camera so you can see.
Yeah, but the activators are rolling, dude. That's the beauty of it.
You could see my arm goes under my boom arm, and so my hand naturally rests on here. So if I want to switch inputs, I'm up here. When we're getting ready to pull a lower third or a bug, my thumb's always like this. So call it the iPhone thumb, right? You know how you would use your phone. You're sitting there doing. That's how I essentially control this. You'll never see me do this. It's always like I'm always kind of doing this. I'm riding around on my
thumb.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm weird. I get it, but it's muscle memory now. It's to the point where I can glance at it. He has built-in icons inside of it. So some of those icons that you saw there are ones that he has prepackaged in the software if you want certain graphics. What I like, Joe, is the ability to have them light up or not light up, or because that, when you're used to a traditional switcher, that button only lights up. It's not every button lighting up, and then you don't have one clue of what's going on. So,
and listen, the power of that from an activator user with vMix and the Stream Deck, dude, that's like the next level of activation. So he's taken something good that vMix is doing and put it on steroids. That's what it is. It's phenomenal. I'm watching.
So are you adding more controllers to it, Joe, for support?
Oh, every day. There's like a box of MIDI controllers shows up here every other day. I mean, maybe not to that extent, but yeah, there are some new controllers on the version 2 list. And if anyone there is actually, I should show on the website, there's a list. I think it is mostly up to date, but there is this list of supported devices.
Yep, I got it right here. I'll pull it up here. Oh, all right.
Oh, I've got it.
Look at this guy. No, you're good. You're good. That makes my job easier.
but there's a list of supported devices. It might be slightly out of date. There's probably some more that I've added that I need to add here. But if there's something that's not there and you say, I absolutely have to use this controller, send me an email or post a message in the Facebook group, and we'll look at it. Like when this shipped, we had maybe 2 of the NewTek USB panels, and now like all the ones past and present, slowly but surely ended up there.
So this is supported?
His Xbox controller?
Yes, it is.
Oh man.
No, now you did it.
Let me ask you one question, Joe, because I'm a musician. So maybe there's some musicians out here. In a couple, 2-3 sentences, what are you envisioning the interface with the Behringer to be? What's your goal? What do you want to accomplish?
The X-Touch?
X32.
X32.
The X32.
Yes.
That's a great question, and I think really quickly, I think it's not going to be like an all-encompassing, like you can do everything on the board with central control. But I think where this really all starts to come together is where you say, okay, we've got triggers. So now when a source in vMix is on program, we're going to pull up this fader, or we're going to fade up this fader over X amount of seconds on the X32. And then when we take it back to preview, when we take it off air, we'll close that channel again. So even though you won't be able to control everything on the desk, it's that tying it all together that is the value.
Well, that just means that when you roll the video clip between your 2 songs, the audio will always be there. You're not waiting on that human to, oh crap, I was sipping my coffee. Exactly. Dude, God bless you, man.
So now it's time, before we wrap this up, for story time with Steve, and we're going to talk about how Joe used to code AppleScript to make the the Korg Nano controller. The Korg Nano controller work with the Wirecast at the time, because we had no way of controlling Wirecast. So Joe decided, well, I'm going to go play with some AppleScript, and so he became the hero of the community. There were some other guys that were doing it. Listen to this guy here.
Oh boy.
And so for the longest time when I ran Wirecast, I used the Korg Nano controller, which almost looks like the ATEM. What is it? The ATEM X-Touch Mini? Kind of looked like that a little bit.
Oh, it looks like the Behringer X-Touch Mini. Yeah, it does resemble that, yeah.
And so he had it set where you pull the fader up and down. That would move your lower third up and down, and you could set up, I mean, we were pretty archaic, but then he set it up where you turn the knob and you could float through all your inputs if they're on a certain level. So to see this come into fruition after, 12, maybe 13 years ago that you created those Apple scripts for Wirecast, to now supporting just about every professional software and hardware switcher out there on the market, that it's pretty incredible, man.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, I was talking about that program I wrote back in 2017, but you make a good point. Like, those Apple scripts clearly are like the genesis of this tool that's just become eventually central control. I just imagine if you could take this thing back 10 years to an episode of broadcast now, I think people's heads would probably explode.
Well, they would all been clamoring for it, because I think it was, what was it? When TTFN were doing their show, they used a lot of the iOS devices. They made the TouchOSC devices, right? And then Mark started embarking and making an iPad app, and it's like, no, we need tactile feedback. We don't want to touch for production.
I remember the thing was, you need to write their TTFN MIDI software for the ATEM, and it never happened. But I guess this kind of is that, because if you want to map a $20 MIDI controller, like with a few rows of buttons, and use that to switch your ATEM Mini with a proper preview program row, I guess this is that tool now.
Let me ask you real quick, then we got to wrap. Some of these guys that are using StreamYard, these guys that are using some other cloud-based solutions that are out there, is it possible, or down the road, because I guess it all depends on an API, is it possible that you can write something that would work with that for those guys using StreamYard, that maybe they want to buy a Stream Deck to use your software with StreamYard or something?
I think it is of great interest. It's not something I'm looking to do in the immediate future, but what I would say is, and I think this kind of segues back from your last episode really well, is that we have, because it's all over network, the vMix communication, we do have a lot of users that are using this tool to control instances of vMix running in AWS, in the cloud. But like, that is a rabbit hole we certainly don't have time for right now.
That just means we have to have you back on.
There you go. Cloud production part 2.
Well, I think it's interesting because, Greg, you'd find this interesting because Joe is actually running vMix in the cloud on some instances where it's not even on his physical computer.
You have good results with it?
Outstanding. I've used as many as 8 different instances of vMix in the cloud, and it's with central control, so I've got maybe 4 machines recording different ISOs. I press one button in central control, and all these instances running off in the cloud start recording at the same time. I could talk about cloud production for hours.
Well,
hey, Joe, let me ask you a question. I know we got to roll here in a minute. You don't mind me asking you, how old are you?
26.
26. 26, and you're a cloud truster. 49, and I'm hanging on to that monster desktop that I built just so I know my vMix is in there, and I caress it at night. I don't know how old Marty is, but he's older than I am, and I'm sure he would caress his vMix too.
You guys,
I'm looking forward to more cloud shows. I think that's the next frontier. I think Joe.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I do use some cloud, but I've not used cloud or vMix in the cloud yet. So,
well, I have a story all about that, but I'll save it for next time.
We'll definitely have to have him back on. But ladies and gentlemen, you
100%.
you can check it out. Go to centralcontrol.io. You can also hit him up on Facebook. In fact, let me pull this up real quick. The Facebook page, the official page of Central Control. Let me pull this down so you don't need to see that. And you can come over here and give it a like. Joe also has a Central Control user group for guys that are, finding real interesting topics and whatnot. Just search Central Control user group, but he posts a lot on here as to what people are doing, what he's doing, how people are using the software, and for $50, man, come on, you guys can pick it up.
It's a deal.
Check him out, Joe. We really appreciate you jumping on here. What time is it in England, or wherever you're located?
It's actually tomorrow. We're 2 minutes into Friday, which is 1 day closer to the weekend.
So, so thank you, Joe, for staying up after midnight your time to join Broadcast Now. And we didn't have any broadcast. That was great. All right.
It'll work this time.
It worked this time, yes. Mr. Greg Terry, youtube.com/Greg Terry Experience. Check it out.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Marty. And thank you, Joe. Look forward to get to know you better, man.
Check out Greg's shows every Tuesday and Friday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 13 feet above South Mercer Street. Towering above the Palacio Studios. You got to check it out. You'll be on tomorrow night, 8:30. So
Rocking
guys,
and rolling.
check it. He'll be on good bandwidth this time.
Absolutely.
So there we go. And also, if you're looking for podcasting, video editing, video production, check him out. Marty McPadden at podjam.tv. Great place.
Thank you, Stephen, Greg, and Joe. Great show today.
It was.
Appreciate all you guys tuning in. And we'll be live tomorrow for the Retro Buzz. But what we're doing is we're starting a little later. We're changing our time. We're going to go live at 8 p.m. Eastern Time because we've had a lot of West Coasters go, we want to watch your show. But it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon when you go live, and yeah, that's not going to happen. Our boss is not going to let us watch the Retro Buzz. So we are going to go live tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Time and do the show. Glenn is supposed to be back, so we'll see. Glenn, Doug, myself, we will see you guys tomorrow, and we'll be back next week for more of the Retro Buzz, and I will be live Saturday for the radio show from 12 to 2 Eastern Time. Till next time, keep it buzzing.
Okay, well, if I hit 1, that's going to go to the teacher's desk, and 2